So we'll have to discuss two more rules. So, rule number 7, the rule states that the angle of departure from an open loop pole is given by pi p plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1 plus phi. What is this phi? This phi is the net angle contribution at this open loop pole by all other open loop poles and zeros. Now let's try to understand the concept of angle of departure. Suppose this is the open loop pole zero configuration of a given system, right? So we can see this one open loop pole, this is the second one, third one, fourth one, fifth one, and this one is a zero. So what we have discussed so far, from that it's clear that when k will be equal to 0, the variable gain k will be equal to 0, one root branch, can you see the material? So one root branch will originate from this open loop pole. The second root branch will originate from this open loop pole, this real open loop pole. The third root branch will originate from this real open loop pole, as well as two complex root branches will originate from this two complex conjugate pole pair, right? Complex conjugate pole pair. Okay. Now you see, um, the root branch, the angle along with which a root branch will originate from an open loop pole is called the angle of departure. Am I clear? The angle with which a root branch leaves one open loop pole is called the angle of departure. Now, if I consider this real open loop pole, then the root branch will move along this particular direction because this is the onlooker segment. So the root branch will move along this direction. So, as per the definition of angle of departure, we see that the angle of departure in this case is 180 degree, right? Similarly, the second root branch will originate from this real open loop pole, and the root branch will move along this particular direction in this particular direction. So, the angle of
Zero.
departure, yes, do you have any question? বলো কিছু বলবে?
No, ma'am. No.
So the angle of departure of this root branch is 0, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
And similarly, this segment is one not onlooker segment. This is again one onlooker segment. Hence, the root branch which will originate from this real open loop pole will move along this direction, along the negative real axis, but in this particular direction. And hence, we find that the angle of departure in this case is also
Zero.
0. Similarly, angle of arrival, in this case you see the angle of arrival of the root branch. This root branch will terminate onto this open loop 0 as k tends to infinity. So the angle of arrival of this root branch at this real open loop 0 will be, what will be the angle? Angle of arrival.
180 degree.
Right. Angle of arrival is 180 degree. That means the angles of departure and angles of arrival from open loop poles, real open loop poles, and at real open loop zeros will always be either 0 or 180 degree, right? But that is not the case for complex open loop poles or open loop zeros. So from this particular open loop pole, the root branch can originate like this. Just follow the cursor. The root branch can originate like this. Okay. And obviously, the root branch which will originate from this conjugate pair will be symmetrical. So we need to find out angle of departure from complex poles, right? So to guess, so that we can guess the initial path of the root branch which is originating from this complex open loop pole. So if we can find out the angle of departure from this particular pole very easily, we don't have to compute because of the symmetry property. We can find out the angle of departure of the root branch, complex root branch from this open loop pole as well. So for complex open loop poles or complex conjugate open loop pole pair, and we'll have to compute angle of departure, and for complex conjugate open loop zeros we'll have to find out the angle of arrivals. So first will learn how to compute angle of departure from one complex pole. So the angle of departure from an open loop pole is given by phi p is equal to plus minus 180 degree 2q plus 1. Now only will compute for angle of departures for complex open loop poles. Now we'll come to this particular equation after we discuss this particular equation. So it easily follows that the angle of departure from a real open loop pole or the angle of arrival at a real open loop zero is always 0 degree or 180 degree that we have discussed. So angle of departure or arrival need therefore be calculated only for complex poles and zeros. Poles and zeros means open loop poles and zeros. Now to find out the angle of departure, let's again refer to this particular figure, right? Now we take a trial point S0 on this S plane. A trial point S0 is, please note the trial point, this particular trial point is one onlooker's point. That means the point is lying on the root locus, right? That is assumption number one. Assumption number two is this point is very close to this open loop pole, and we'll be calculating the angle of departure from this complex open loop pole. Okay, so again, I repeat, S is a trial point which is one onlooker's point, and this point is very close to this open loop pole, right? So now to find out the angle at this angle contributed by all the open loop poles and zeros at this particular trial point, let's construct the phasors. So this is the phasor S plus theta, S plus P1. This one say S plus P2. So likewise, we construct all these phasors. Okay. And after constructing the phasors, we find that this particular zero contributes an angle which is given by theta 4. Whereas this open loop pole contributes an angle which is theta 1. This pole contributes an angle which is theta 2. This is theta 3. This is theta 4. And let's assume from this figure it's apparent that this particular complex pole for which we are trying to find out the angle of departure is contributing an angle at this point which is given by phi p, right? So at this point now, we'll calculate the angles contributed by all other open loop poles and zeros except this particular pole for which we are trying to find out angle of departure. So the angle will be given by the net angle contribution at this point by all other open loop poles and zeros will be given by theta 4 minus theta 1 minus theta 2 minus theta 3 minus theta 4. Do you agree?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So let's call this angle as net angle contribution by all other open loop poles and zeros is denoted by the symbol phi. Okay. Now, at this point, this pole is contributing an angle which is phi p. Since this is a pole, hence the angle GSHS at that particular point is will be given by phi minus phi p. Do you agree? Since it's a pole, hence
Okay, ma'am.
its
Yes,
angle
ma'am.
contribution will be negative. So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
angle at that particular point will be phi minus phi p. And since the point is one on locus point, that means the point lies on the root locus, hence angle criterion will be satisfied at that particular point, right? So phi minus phi p will be equal to plus minus 180 degree 2q plus 1,
Yes, sir.
right? So phi p, from this expression after site transposition, we find that phi p is equal to plus minus 180 degree 2q plus 1 plus this one will be phi, not theta, this phi. Please write down the correct equation. So phi p is equal to plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1 plus phi, where phi is the net angle contribution at that point by all other open loop poles and zeros, excluding the complex pole for which we are calculating the angle of departure. Done.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, again, let's look at this figure. You see, in the limiting condition, what was our second assumption? This point is very close to this complex open loop pole, right? So, in the limiting condition, we can say that this point and this complex open loop pole, these 2 points are identical, they are co-located. This trial point and this complex open loop pole are located at the same point on the S-plane. These 2 points are co-located. Do you understand?
Okay, ma'am.
Right? So if these 2 points are co-located, if these 2 points are identical, that means in the limiting condition, this phi p will be the angle of departure from this complex open loop pole. Agree?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Hence the rule. So the angle of departure from a complex open loop pole is given by phi p, which is equal to plus minus 180 degree 2q plus 1 plus phi, where phi is the net angle contribution by all other open loop poles and zeros at that particular complex open loop pole. So now angle of arrival, that will be very simple. Uh, yes. Similarly, the angle of arrival at a complex open loop zero is given by phi z, which is plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1 minus phi, Why it would be minus 5? Because just will apply the same logic, only this equation, this angle, the angle contributed by one complex open loop 0 will be plus phi z. So this equation will be phi plus phi z, which will be equal to plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1. Clear? Hence, the angle of departure from a complex open loop pole will be equal to phi p, which is equal to plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1 plus phi, where phi is the net angle contribution by all other open loop poles and zeros at that particular complex open loop pole, whereas phi z is the angle of arrival at a complex open loop 0, and phi z is given by plus minus 180 degree to q plus 1 minus phi, where phi, again phi is the net angle contribution by all other open loop poles and zeros at that particular complex 0, open loop 0, right? So let's now consider the open loop pole 0 configuration of a given system is like this. So two complex conjugate open loop pole pair and one single 0, right? So the locations of the complex open loop pole pair are at -1 plus minus j1, and this 0 open loop 0 is located at -2. Okay, so find out the angle of departure. This is the angle of departure. So find out the angle of departure from this complex open loop pole. Do it.
180 degree for the pole and 90 degree for the zero.
I don't get you. What will be the angle of
It will be,
departure?
ma'am, it will be plus 135 degree.
Plus 135 degree. Have you calculated the value?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So you can see the angle is plus 135 degree. That means the root branch will originate in this particular direction. Okay. And similarly, if you can calculate this angle of departure, very easily you'll be able to find out the angle of departure from this conjugate pair. So the root branch will originate in this direction because of the property of symmetry. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
Okay. So the last rule, that is very simple. The intersection of the root locus branches with the imaginary axis, whether the root locus intersects the imaginary axis or not, that is very important, because on that particular fact the stability of the system will depend, right? So we'll have to find out whether the root branches intersect the imaginary axis or not. So that can be found simply by applying Raoult's criterion. So suppose this is the open loop transfer function, given open loop transfer function, right? GSHS is k by s into s plus 4 into s square plus 4s plus 20. Let me check. Okay. So from this we can form the characteristic equation. The characteristic equation will be s into s plus 4 into s square plus 4s plus 20 plus k. So this is our characteristic equation. Now we can apply Raoult's stability criterion like this. As you can see, what are the coefficients? S to the power 4 plus 8 s cube plus 36 s square plus 80s plus k. So the first row will be corresponding to this term s to the power 4, and its elements will be in this particular order 136k. And the second row will correspond to this term s cube, and the elements of the second row will be 8 and 80. Let's check. Yes, s to the power 4, 1 plus 36 plus k and 8 plus 80. So we can divide the elements of this row by 8, and is now s cube term will contain, this row will contain terms which are 1 by 10. Okay, so s square, the elements of s square are 26 and k. This is your assignment. Please check the values. So S1, 26 into 10 minus 1 into k divided by 26. So the first term of this row will be 260 minus k by 26, and the second term will be 0, and S0 will contain a term which is simply k. So from Raoult stability criterion, we know that for a system to be stable, all these values should be the terms appearing in the first column of Raoult array should be positive. That means k should be greater than 0. 260 minus k by 26 should be greater than equal to 0. Now we want to find out the point of intersection. That means that means we want to find out the limiting condition for stability. That means we want to find out if we make this particular term 0, then s to the power 1, this particular row will contain all 0 terms, isn't it? So for what value
Yes,
of gain k, this particular term will be 0 for a value
260
of
please.
k which is 260. So accordingly, with these coefficients, we can form the auxiliary equations, and in the limiting condition, we know that the value of gain k is 260. Hence, the auxiliary equation is 26 s square, 26 s square plus k, where k is 260 degree. The roots of the above equation lie on the j omega axis, and the roots are s equal to plus minus j root 10, right? So the root locus or two root branches will intersect, since we are getting one complex conjugate root pair. So two root branches will intersect the imaginary axis at a point for which the value s is given by plus minus, or at 2 points rather, for which the value of s is plus minus j root 10, and the limiting value of gain k is equal to 260 degree. So obviously, if we increase the value of gain k beyond this value, that means if it is 260.5 or 261, that means if k exceeds this value, then two root branches will move in the right half of this plane. That means for those values of gain k, two root branches, or rather two roots, will lie in the right half of the S plane, thus making the system unstable. Here,
Yeah, ma'am.
so these are the rules given in a tabular form. So we'll have to apply these rules, and accordingly we'll have to sketch the approximate root locus. And the last rule is the magnitude criterion. That means the open loop gain k at any point, obviously in polar form, at any point S0 on the root locus is given by the magnitude criterion. So k will be product of S0 plus Pj divided by product of magnitude of S0 plus Zi. Or we know that the value of gain k at a point S0 on the root locus will be product of phasor lengths from S0 to open loop poles divided by product of phasor lengths from S0 to open loop zeros. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. this problem is given as an assignment. So sketch the root locus of this plot as the forward path gain k varies from 0 to infinity. Sketch this plot, and if you find any difficulty, please feel free to ask me. So do you have any question? Have you received the material? Have you received the material? আর কিছু জিজ্ঞেস করার আছে?
No, ma'am.
আচ্ছা, এর আগে যে এক্সাম্পলস গুলো আমরা কনসিডার করেছিলাম সেগুলো কমপ্লিট করবে, লাইক দিস ওয়ান। এটা করে দেওয়া আছে,
Okay, ma'am.
চেক করবে। এই যে এক্সাম্পলটা নিয়েছিলাম আমরা ব্রেকআপ পয়েন্ট অবধি ক্যালকুলেট করেছিলাম, তাই তো? তাহলে ইন্টারসেকশন পয়েন্ট বার করবে, প্রত্যেকটা কমপ্লিট করবে। Okay, the next chapter, the third chapter, is on Nyquist stability criterion. And Nyquist stability criterion is a stability criterion based on frequency domain. It's a frequency domain based stability criterion. That's why it's written over here, stability in frequency domain, Nyquist stability criterion. Routh-Hurwitz stability criterion is basically one complex frequency domain based criterion. Root locus technique is also complex domain based because root locus is plot or is sketched on S plane, so it's basically a complex frequency domain based technique. Whereas Nyquist stability criterion is completely a frequency domain based technique, right? Now, already we have discussed these points that the stability of a system is dependent upon the locations of the roots of the characteristic equation on the S plane. We know that. Now, if all the roots of the characteristic equation, or in other words, if all the closed loop poles of the system are in the left half of the S plane, then the system will be absolutely stable. But if one single root of the characteristic equation lies in the right half of the S plane and the rest are in the left half of the S plane, in that case the system will become an unstable system and the system will be of no use to us. So Nyquist stability criterion plays a key role for finding out the absolute stability of the system. That means whether the system is stable or not. That means yes, no criterion. And in contrast to the Routh's stability criterion, Nyquist stability criterion is also very useful for ascertaining the relative stability of the system, right? So it's a very, very powerful technique for judging the stability, absolute and relative stability of a system. And very easily we can ascertain the stability, be it relative stability or be it absolute stability. of the system using this particular technique, frequency domain based technique. Number one. Now, the another advantage of Nyquist stability criterion is just like Root-Lucas technique. Routh-Hurwitz criterion is not a graphical tool, or those criteria, Routh's criterion as well as Hurwitz criterion. Those two are not graphical tools, right? Root-Lucas technique was a graphical tool that we have already seen. Now, like Root-Lucas technique, Nyquist criterion is also a graphical tool having its own advantages. And the third advantage of Nyquist stability criterion is if the open loop transfer function, that means if GSHS is known, if GSHS is known, then we can find out, we can invest, or we can ascertain, we can judge the stability of the closed loop system. Actually, we are interested about the stability of the closed loop system. It might so happen that one open loop system is unstable, we'll see that. But if we close the feedback path, it might so happen that the system will become a stable one. So generally we work with closed loop system, and hence the stability of a closed loop system is of importance to us, right? And the advantage of Nyquist stability criterion is that from the open loop transfer function, given open loop transfer function, we can find out the stability of the closed loop system. And in this case, it's not required, it's not at all required to solve the characteristic equation for finding out the locations of the roots on the S plane, right? So given the open loop transfer function, that means GSHS, that means we can say, in other words, it can be placed in this way, that if the frequency response, or to be more precise, if the open loop frequency response is known to us, I repeat, if the open loop frequency response is known to us, then with that particular information, we can find out the closed loop stability of the system without computing the roots of the characteristic equation. You get my point?
Yes, ma'am.
And open loop frequency response. Just think about that particular experiment, identification of linear systems using frequency response method. Can you recall the experiment?
Yes, ma'am.
So you know that very easily we can obtain, or we can find out the open loop frequency response for a given linear time invariant system. It's very simple to obtain open loop frequency response, and if the open loop frequency response is known, then we can find out the stability of the closed loop system. Right? Now, Nyquist stability criterion is based on a theorem of complex variable, and the theorem was proposed by Cauchy, and the theorem is known as principle of argument. Yes, principle of argument. Okay. So, if we want to learn Nyquist stability criterion, or if you want to understand the essence of Nyquist stability criterion, then first of all, we'll have to learn principle of argument. Clear? So, in the next section, first we'll learn principle of argument, which is a theorem of complex variable proposed by Cauchy. Now let's consider a function q, which is function of s, where s is our complex variable given by sigma plus j omega. So S is complex and QS is a function of S. In this case, this QS is not the characteristic equation. It's not at all the characteristic equation of a system. QS is any arbitrary function. Instead of writing it as QS, we could have written it as BS or CS like this. Only this is the function of the complex variable S. Now let's represent this function QS in this form, that is QS is equal to S minus alpha 1 into S minus alpha 2 into S minus alpha m whole divided by S minus beta 1 into S minus beta 2 into S minus beta n, right? That means QS is basically ratio of two polynomials. The numerator polynomial ns divided by denominator polynomial ds, and in this case we are expressing both the polynomials, the numerator polynomial and the denominator polynomial, in factored form. Here, have you understood this?
Yeah, ma'am.
So again I repeat, this QS is not the characteristic equation, any arbitrary function of S. So if we represent QS in this form, then as per the definitions of poles and zeros, we can identify that all these alphas, alpha 1, alpha 2, alpha m, all these are the zeros of this function QS, and this beta 1, beta 2, beta n, these are the poles of this QS. For any function represented in this particular form, we can identify, we can associate zeros and poles with that particular function. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
So this alpha i's are the zeros of this function QS, and beta j's are the poles of this function QS. Now, you see, since S is complex, S is given by sigma plus j omega, hence QS for a particular value of S, for a particular value of S, QS will also be complex. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Is the statement correct? 100% correct.
If there are any complex conjugate pole or zero, then it would.
No. What was the statement? What was the
If
statement? For
A
any
is
value
equal,
of, for, let me first repeat the sentence. For any value of S, QS will be complex. That is the statement. Is it 100% correct? Is this statement 100% correct? Hmm? Please answer this question. Why? No, that is not the answer. That's not the correct answer.
Pole zero elimination.
Pole zero elimination.
মানে alpha 1 and beta 1 same.
if
Pole zero
imaginary part of
cancellation.
that is
যদি
and
pole
the
zero cancellation হয়, let me answer this question first. If alpha 1 is equal to beta 1, then this term will cancel this term, but the rest of the terms are present. So we can put the value and we can find out the value of QS. So that is not the answer. তোমাদের জানা এক্ষুনি আমি যদি আনসারটা দিয়ে দিই তখন
আরেকবার যে কোশ্চেনটা ম্যাম একবার রিপিট করবেন।
হ্যাঁ রিপিট করছি। What was the statement? For any value of a's, any value of a's will get a value of QS and the value will be complex.
Ma'am, if S is equal to any of alpha 1 to alpha m, then it
What will happen?
then it will be equal to 0.
It will be equal to 0. Okay, fine, no problem. But
if it is
There is
equal
a-
to any of beta 1 to beta n, then we will not get a value.
QS will not simply exist, right? If S is equal to either beta 1 or beta 2, then QS will not simply exist, will not be able to find out QS. So that is the answer. Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are assuming that the value of A's that we are choosing is not equal to this alphas or not equal to this beta values, right? And QS does exist. So if QS does exist, then since S is complex variable, hence QS will also be complex and QS can be written as some U plus JV. Write it down. QS will be equal to U plus JV. Now you agree? Do you agree?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Fine. So we do have a plane which is our S plane. We are familiar with that particular plane, and the axes are labeled as sigma and j omega, right? So if we take a value of S for which QS does exist, that means the point will lie on the S plane here.
Clear, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now you see, for a particular value of S on the S plane, we are getting a value of QS denoted by U plus JV. Hence, we can conceive a second plane which we'll call our QS plane, and we can label the axis of that plane as U, and the imaginary axis will be denoted by JV.
Okay, ma'am.
ঠিক আছে? So for a
Yeah, ma'am.
particular value of S on the S plane, we'll get a point on the QS plane. Right?
Yes.
Or in other words, we can say that this QS is the mapping function. QS is the mapping function with the help of which a point on the S plane is mapped onto a point on the QS plane.
Yes, ma'am.
Is it absolutely clear?
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
Okay, now you can see these two planes. So this is our S plane, sigma j omega, and this is the QS plane, and this QS plane is from a point on the S plane, we can move to a point on the QS plane, and the mapping function will be this QS governed by this equation. Clear?
Clear, ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Now, next, let us consider a closed contour like this. A closed contour on the S plane, and the assumption is the closed contour has been chosen in such a manner that this contour will not pass through any singular point for this QS. I guess you know the meaning of singular point. Do you know the meaning of singular point? Hello?
Yes, ma'am.
So singular points are the points at which either the function or its higher derivatives does not, or higher
Yes.
derivatives do not exist, right? So
Yes,
the
ma'am.
points at which this function does exist, those points are called analytic point, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
So let's take a close contour on the S plane, and the basic assumption is the contour will not pass through any singular point of the QS, or in other words, the contour, at all the points on this contour, the function QS will be analytic.
Okay, ma'am. Yes.
Clear? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So since it's a closed contour, you see, let's assume that we have started from this particular point S1, then let's consider that we are passing through this point S2, S3, S4, S5, and finally again will terminate at this particular point S1. So the starting point and the terminating point, since it's a closed contour, hence the starting point and the terminating point, these 2 points will be same. Otherwise, will not get a closed contour. Isn't it?
Yes.
Are you taking
Yes,
notes? Are you
yes,
taking
ma'am.
notes?
Clear.
Should I go a little bit slow?
No, ma'am. It's okay.
Okay, fine. So now, here is our mapping function QS. QS is given. So for this S1, we'll get some QS1, and that point can be mapped or located on this QS plane. This is QS1.
Okay, ma'am. Yes.
Similarly, for QS S2, we'll have another value of QS, that is QS2, and again we can locate that point on the QS plane as QS2. Similarly, we'll get QS3, right? And since
Yes, ma'am.
the starting point was S1 and the terminating point is again S1. So on the QS plane, we'll get QS1, QS2, QS3, QS4, and
In point
again
with
will
QS.
terminate right onto this particular point, which is QS1. Here, so that means on the QS plane, if we take a closed contour on the S plane, which does not pass through any singular point of QS, then on the QS plane, we'll get a closed contour like this. So far, is this clear?
Clear, ma'am.
So this is our QS plane contour, this is our S plane contour, and this is our QS plane contour. And often the QS plane contour or contours are denoted by a symbol tau. So the QS plane contour will be denoted as tau Q. Now,
Okay, ma'am.
now look at this S-plane contour. Now, if we traverse this contour in the clockwise direction, look at this arrow direction. So we are traversing this contour in the clockwise direction, or in other words, we are moving along this contour in a clockwise direction, and in the process, if we identify the area lying to the right of the contour. That means if I move along this contour, just note Niona, just follow the cursor. Try to understand first. So if we move along this contour in this direction, this is our clockwise direction, in this direction, then this is the region which is lying to the right of this contour.
Okay, ma'am.
Right? So when we'll move in this particular direction, again in the clockwise direction, then this will be the region. This is the region which is lying to the right of this contour. This region is lying to the left of the contour. This region is lying to the right of this contour. Only if we move along the contour in the clockwise direction. Clear?
Yes, ma'am. Clear.
So if we traverse this contour in the clockwise direction, and if we identify the region lying to the right of this contour, so in this case, this is the region, then this region will be said to be enclosed by this contour,
Okay, ma'am.
right? So in this figure, the shaded region is being enclosed by this closed contour, and the regions lying to the right of this contour are not enclosed by this contour.
Okay, ma'am.
So this is the convention that we, the control system engineers, follow. The mathematicians follow another convention. The result is same. So in some book, you might find this particular the other convention. That's why I'm just mentioning that particular convention. But in this class, we'll follow this convention. Now, the other convention is if we move along the contour in the counterclockwise direction. That means now we are moving in this direction, in the
It will be the
counterclockwise
left.
direction. And right, if we identify the region, if we mark the region lying to the left of the region, then that particular region will be enclosed by the contour. So
Okay,
in
ma'am.
my class, I'll follow this particular convention. But do not mix, you can use any convention, but do not mix this
Ma'am, can you
convention.
please repeat again this convention? I couldn't get it.
The second one.
No, ma'am. Your whatever we were following.
Okay. So we are taking a closed contour on the S-plane. Is that clear?
Yes.
And if we take a closed contour in the S-plane, and if the contour doesn't pass through any singular point for QS, then as we have discussed, we'll get a closed contour on the QS plane. Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am. That's fair.
Okay. Now, if we start traversing the contour in the clockwise direction, look at this arrow direction. This arrow direction. That means we are traversing along this contour in clockwise direction. And in the process, if we mark the region lying to the right of this contour, this is my contour, I am moving in this particular direction. So this is the region lying to the right of this contour. Understood? Got it?
Yes.
And if we move along this direction, then this is the region lying to the right of the contour. And hence, the region which is lying to the right of the contour while traversing the contour in the clockwise direction will said to be enclosed by this contour, closed contour. So this is the region that is being enclosed by this closed contour. Now is it clear?
Yes, ma'am. Clear, ma'am.
Okay. Now let us assume, again you see this is our S plane, this is the QS plane, U plus JV, QS plane. We have taken an arbitrary, suppose some QS is given, and we have taken one closed contour on the S plane, and the contour does satisfy the assumptions, that is, the contour will not pass through any singular point, right? And will traverse, if you traverse the contour in the clockwise direction, so this is the region which will be enclosed by the contour. Now let's assume that the QS given QS has its zeros and poles located at alpha 1, alpha 2, and these are the poles beta 1, beta 2, beta 3, so on and so forth. Just refer to this equation. So alpha i's are the zeros of this QS, which is any arbitrary function of S, and this beta j's are the poles of this QS, right? So if we assume that these are the locations of the zeros and poles of QS on the S plane, then it's clear that one zero of QS, one single zero of QS is being enclosed by this S plane contour. Got it?
Okay, ma'am.
So I repeat, from this diagram, it's clear that one zero of QS is being enclosed by this S-plane contour, which we have otherwise taken arbitrarily. Right? Now, let's take a point on this S-plane. So this is the point of concern on the S-plane and also on the contour. So this is the point of interest, right? Now let's construct all these phases. So this is S plus B1. This is, if I consider this one if I represent it in a general form, then this phasor will be S minus B1. This phasor is S minus B2. This phasor is S minus B3. This is S minus alpha 1. and this phasor is this phasor is S minus alpha 2, and this phasor is S minus alpha 1. Clear?
Yeah, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, let's discuss one thing. That is, already we have discussed that this QS, since S is complex, QS will be complex. Right? So, for a particular value of S, say S1, we can say that QS will be some U1 plus JV1. Right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that
Yes, ma'am.
means the this QS will have a magnitude as well as a phase angle. QS will have a magnitude as well as a phase angle, and I have written this expression. Have you noted down this expression, or rather this equation?
Yes, ma'am.
So what will be the magnitude of QS? Magnitude of QS will be magnitude of S minus alpha 1 multiplied by magnitude of S minus alpha 2 dot 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 multiplied by S magnitude of S minus alpha m. So product of all these phasor lengths divided by magnitude S minus beta 1, magnitude S minus beta 2, dot 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 magnitude S minus beta n. So product of all these phasor lengths and ratio of these two, right?
Yes.
And
Yes, ma'am.
angle of QS, what will be the angle of QS? That means sum of the angles contributed by the zeros, all the zeros,
Minus.
minus sum of the angles contributed by these poles. Hence, we can write these two equations. The magnitude of QS, as I said, will be given by this expression, and angle of QS will be equal to angle S minus alpha 1 plus angle S minus alpha 2 dot 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 minus angle S minus beta 1 minus angle S minus beta 2, so on and so forth. Clear?
Clear, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Now, when we'll discuss Nyquist criterion, we'll find that we are not actually interested about the shape of the QS plane contour. This is our QS plane contour, and actually we are not interested about, we are not at all concerned about the shape of the contour, right? So we are interested about the fact that whether this QS plane contour encircles the origin of the QS plane or not. Got it?
Can you repeat this question?
Yes. So when we'll construct the QS plane contour, we'll sketch the QS plane contour, we'll see that we are not interested about the exact shape of this contour. Okay. But we are interested about the fact that whether this contour, whether this QS plane contour encircles, or in other words, encloses the origin of the QS plane or not.
Okay, ma'am.
Right? So in this figure, if I consider that for a given QS and for this given S-plane contour, this is our QS plane contour tau q, we find that yes, the QS plane contour does enclose, or in other words, we use the term encircle. The QS plane contour encircles the origin. This is the origin of the QS plane. So the QS plane contour in this case encircles the origin of the QS plane. Clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Okay. Again, follow the cursor. If for this QS plane, for this S plane contour, if we get a contour on the QS plane, just follow the cursor, which is like this. Can you follow this cursor? Again, there is a closed contour on the QS plane, right? But if the contour is like this, then it's obvious that this QS plane contour is not enclosing the origin of the QS plane. Got this? Have you understood this?
Okay.
Hmm?
Clear, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we are interested about the fact that whether the QS plane contour encircles the origin or not. Now let's come back to this figure. Now we'll be traversing along the closed contour that we have taken, that we have chosen on the S plane. So the value of S will vary like this. And as we have discussed, at all these points on this contour, the function QS is analytic. That means the function QS will exist. And will traverse this contour in clockwise direction. Got it? Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
Now, as the value of S, as we traverse along this contour, that means the value of S will change. The value of S will change. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
That means this magnitude QS will change for different values of S taken on the contour.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And similarly, the angle QS will change.
Phase angle will also change. Yes,
Phase
ma'am.
angle will also change, right? So the change in phase angle, let's denote it by delta, this sign, delta QS, net change in phase angle. Now let's see. As I said, we are not interested about the actual shape of the QS plane contour. That's why we are not considering this part, this magnitude part. We are only interested about the change in phase angle of QS. So now follow carefully. Follow this cursor. So as we move along this QS plane contour, sorry. as we move along this S-plane contour, let us consider this particular phasor, S minus beta 1. So this phasor will change, just try to follow the cursor. Okay. This phasor will change like this. Can you follow? Will change like this.
Yes,
For
ma'am.
different values of AS on the contour, and finally
Again,
the
simple.
ultimate phasor will be this one. So for this
Yes.
phasor, what is the net change in angle? That means
Zero.
delta angle S minus beta 1.
Yes, ma'am.
It will be 0. Do you agree, everyone? Is it clear? No. So that is valid for this phasor, that is valid for this phasor, and that is for valid for this phasor as well. Now let us consider this phasor. So as we move along this contour on the S plane, you see now this phasor will move like this.
Yes, ma'am.
So what will be the net change in angle of this phasor? That means delta angle S minus alpha 1.
Yes, ma'am. It will be minus 360 degree.
Uh, angle, the sign part I will consider later on, but the phasor, tip of the phasor will complete a circle, isn't it?
Yes, ma'am.
Or in other words, though it's not a circle, but actually the net change in angle of this phasor will be equal to 360 degree at its as it's
Yes, ma'am.
having a complete rotation, right? And since
Yes,
the
ma'am.
angle contributed by zeros are positive, so now in this case where one single zero was enclosed by the S-plane contour, delta QS will be equal to delta S minus 1, and all the rest of the angles, that is delta S minus alpha 2, delta S minus beta 1, all these components will
Zero.
be 0, right? So delta QS will be equal to, since we are moving in the clockwise direction, hence delta S minus alpha 1 will be equal to delta QS, and that is
It will
equal
be
to
plus two.
minus 2 pi.
Yes, ma'am.
Why plus?
Ma'am,
We are moving, we are,
clockwise. Ma'am,
yes.
yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It will be minus 2 pi.
Net change in angle, mod of net changing angle will be 2 pi, right? And the angle contribution of zeros are positive, but here we are rotating in the clockwise direction. Hence, the net change in angle will be equal to minus 2 pi. Is it absolutely clear?
Yeah, ma'am.
So, minus. You see
Clockwise.
here we are moving in the clockwise direction, right? The phasor is rotating in a clockwise direction. Hence, the angle will be negative. যদি আমরা কাউন্টার ক্লকওয়াইজ ডিরেকশনে মুভ করতাম তাহলে অ্যাঙ্গেলটা পজিটিভ হতো। বোঝা গেছে? Now, so net change in angle of QS is equal to minus 2 pi. So, on the QS plane, you see, this is one QS phasor. This is one QS phasor. Follow this cursor. This is one QS phasor. Yes or
Okay.
no? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yes.
So since net changing angle of QS phasor is minus 2 pi, hence the tip of the QS phasor will rotate like this in the clockwise direction once, and in the process will encircle the origin of the QS plane. This is my QS phasor, and delta QS is minus 2 pi. Hence, the QS phasor will rotate like this, will complete one single rotation around this or about this origin, about this point.
Okay, ma'am.
বোঝা গেল?
হ্যাঁ, ma'am. Yes.
So, what is our observation? If one single zero of QS is enclosed by the S-plane contour, then the corresponding QS plane contour will encircle the origin of the QS plane once in a clockwise direction.
Okay, ma'am. Yeah.
Similarly,
It's minus 720 degree and it will be
minus 720 degree করতে কে এলো? দাঁড়াও। Now, in this case, you see two zeros of QS, alpha 1 and alpha 2, are being enclosed by the chosen S-plane contour, right? So, this phasor will complete one rotation. Similarly, this phasor will complete another rotation. So, let's get back to this equation. Delta QS, yes. Now, delta QS will be equal to minus 2 pi because of this alpha 1. This alpha 1 is being enclosed by the S-plane contour, minus another 2 pi because alpha 2 is now being enclosed. The second zero is being enclosed by the S-plane contour. So, delta QS will be equal to 2 into minus 2 pi. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am. So that
So,
will be minus 4 pi, no? 7.
minus 4 pi.
So that
So
will be
the
minus
corresponding
720 degree.
720 ডিগ্রি 720 ডিগ্রিতে যাবে দরকার নেই আমাদের 2 পাই
Okay.
হলে বুঝতে সুবিধা হবে ঠিক
Okay.
আছে
Okay, ma'am. Okay.
2 into minus 2 pi, that means the corresponding QS plane contour will encircle the origin of the QS plane twice. 2 into minus 2 pi, twice in the counterclockwise, sorry, in the clockwise direction, sorry, in the clockwise direction, just like this. Follow this cursor. So there will be number of encirclement of the origin of the QS plane by QS plane contour will be equal to 2, and the direction will be in the clockwise direction. So this is one encirclement and this is the second encirclement, right? Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it absolutely clear?
Here, ma'am.
Okay. Similarly, we can argue like this, that if instead of one zero, if one pole of QS is enclosed by the S-plane contour, then and all other open loop pole, all other poles and zeros of QS are not being enclosed by this S-plane contour, then net change in angle of QS, delta QS will now be minus of minus 2
Yeah.
pi. That is plus 2 pi.
Okay, ma'am. So this time it will be the anti-clockwise rotation.
Yes, anti-clockwise rotation means the
QS.
QS phasor or the QS plane contour will encircle the origin of the QS plane once in counterclockwise direction. Okay. Similarly, if two poles are enclosed, then the QS plane contour will encircle. Can you follow this cursor? Will encircle the origin of the QS plane twice in counterclockwise direction.
Clear, ma'am.
So you see, if two poles are now okay, in this diagram we can see that two poles of QS, sorry, three poles of QS and 1 0 of QS are being enclosed by this chosen S-plane contour, right? So for
Minus
this
2 pi plus 6 pi.
minus 2 pi plus 6 pi, right? For 0, net changing angle will be minus 2 pi, and for this three poles, net changing angle of QS will be 3 into plus 2 pi. That means 6 pi minus 2 pi, which is
4
equal
pi.
to 4 pi. So the corresponding QS plane contour will encircle the origin of the QS plane twice.
Twice.
4 pi, so 2 into 2 pi. So the QS plane will encircle the origin twice in the
Counterclockwise here.
counterclockwise direction, right? So now we can
Yes.
generalize this. Having discussing this, we can generalize that if P poles of QS and Z zeros of QS are enclosed by the S-plane contour, then for P poles, net changing angle of QS will be P into plus 2 pi, right?
Yeah, ma'am.
And for Z zeros, net changing angle will be Z into minus
Minus
2
2 pi.
pi, right? So we can say that, so if P poles and Z zeros of QS are enclosed by the S plane contour, then the corresponding QS plane contour will encircle the origin Z times in clockwise direction and P times in the counterclockwise direction. Agree?
Yes, ma'am.
So if we combine these encirclements and if we say that N is the net encirclement of the origin by the QS plane contour, N is the total number of encirclement of the QS of the origin of the QS plane by the QS plane contour, then the value of N will be equal to P minus Z times in the counterclockwise direction.
Yes, ma'am.
P times counterclockwise direction, Z times clockwise direction. Hence, N, total number of encirclement of the origin of the QS plane by QS plane contour will be N equal to P minus Z times in counterclockwise direction. But it's written.
Okay, ma'am.
I can't find this in here. Okay. So I'm talking about this relationship. So total number of encirclement of the origin of the QS plane contour of the origin of the QS plane by QS plane contour will be N in the counterclockwise direction, which is equal to P minus Z, where P number of poles of QS and Z number of zeros of QS are being enclosed by the S plane contour. Clear?
Clear, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So this relation between the enclosure of poles and zeros of QS by the S-plane contour and the encirclements of the origin by the corresponding QS plane contour is commonly known as principle of argument. And this principle of argument, or rather, the Nyquist stability criterion, completely rests on this principle of argument. Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am.
You have any question?
No, ma'am.